All the time when I make videos like this, I'll always say, well, these aren't ranked. And all the comments will be, well, you need to rank them. Fine. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with some more 2024 wrap-up stuff, some year-end material here. It's always a lot of fun to look back on the year and see how things changed as the year went along. A video I make every single year is talking about, the new series that I'm going to start. And this year I did start 16 new series. And I said which ones were my favorite and which ones maybe missed the mark a little bit. And since everybody insists that I do it, I have put those in kind of a power ranking here from my least favorite to my absolute favorite. So if something's a little lower, doesn't mean it was a bad series, just maybe it missed the mark for me. It wasn't quite what I was hoping. I'm not taking it away from you if you love that series, so always remember that. Because I'm pretty sure that the first one on here is going to make people flip some tables a little bit, and you need to let me explain before you react to them. So let's go ahead and kick it off, going from number 16 all the way down to number 1. Number 16, guys, it's going to be Discworld. Now, before you flip out, I know the turtles get very upset when anything is negative said about Discworld. However, they will tell you shouldn't start with The Color of Magic. And well, I started with The Color of Magic, and now I see why, guys, because it was one of my least favorite reads of 2024. And it was one of those where I feel like it kind of was a detriment because it didn't make me very excited to pick up Light Fantastic and continue, especially since everyone's like, yeah, no, you'd be messing up twice if you picked up Light Fantastic. So yeah, definitely, probably it was smart if you listen to the turtles and not start with The Color of Magic, because it will really demotivate you from continuing along the path of the turtle. Not that path of the turtle, this path of the turtle. You know what I mean. Number 15, I have to go with one of my biggest surprises of the year, and that was the letdown that was Mercy of the Gods. So Captive's War, James S.A. Corey. This one really was so anticipated because I love The Expanse so much. I thought for sure this would just kind of follow in a similar vein. Did not quite at all. And it was very, very surprising because I don't know. I thought that they did amazing character work, and I thought they were maybe a little different than what usually my detraction of sci-fi is. There's not enough focus on the characters, where Expanse really focused on those characters more than anything, I felt like. And this, it was it's like just hanging out, watching people do a science experiment, and it really, really did let me down. Number 14, I was super, super hyped for this series, but Demon War Saga by R.A. Salvatore. The first book, Demon Awakens, just was not what I was hoping it was going to be at all. It felt like this was one of those where people were always talking about Driss. They always talked about R.A.'s, his Star Wars work. And it felt like this was one that was really, it wasn't talked about much, but the people who love it really freaking love it. That first book was any indication, it was probably not going to be a series for me. I did not care about the protagonist at all. The character that I was kind of hoping the series was going to follow was one and done, so that kind of bummed me out a little bit. And I just thought, if this is the duo that you're going forward with in the rest of the series, I don't know if it's worth the investment for me. So that was quite a surprise because, again, I have loved the Driss books, and I just love the way he writes that group of characters outside of just the main protagonist, and I just didn't feel like you were getting it very much. And it's one of those where I say, look, I don't try to judge a book off book, or judge a series off of book one. It sucks, but a lot of people have told me that love the series were like, yeah, it's pretty indicative of how the series does go. So if you weren't really into that one, maybe save yourself the time, and I probably will. Number 13, this one was a shocker to me because I had wanted to read Anthony Ryan for a long time, guys, but Bloodsong was a monumental disappointment to me. So Raven's Shadow would fall here at number 13, and that is shocking because Bloodsong gets damn near universal praise as one of the greatest fantasy books ever. Like, you could treat it as a standalone. It's such an amazing story. Since I started this channel, everyone was told me I was going to love it. Guys, it was just Name of the Wind the lesser to me, and it wasn't even as good as Name of the Wind, which I'm already not super duper high on. So I don't know. It was just something about the storytelling format that people just lashed onto, I think, after they read Name of the Wind. And it's nothing new. We've seen Dickens doing it as far back as, 100 plus years ago. So it's one of those where it didn't really grab me like it does everyone else. I didn't think that the story was that interesting. The coming of age bits could have been better, honestly. But to me, it was very much in that same style of both, where I'm like, where's this character struggles? This character is just always the best at everything that they're at. In every single room, they're always the smartest person. They never fail at anything. They're just always the best. And people are like, well, unreliable narrator. He's recounting the story. Well, then that's just not my style. I don't care for that. So I'm familiar with what unfamiliar narrator is. It doesn't seem to be something that clicks with me unless it's someone who's doing it really, really well, like Anne Rice did in the first Vampire Chronicles trilogy. I think that was when you see, okay, unreliable narrator can be done right, and it doesn't have to just be to make one person look amazing at everything they do. And Bloodsong, monumental disappointment. I can't believe how much I was like halfway in the book. I was like, this is the book that everyone gives 5 stars to? I'm shocked. So unpopular opinion? Maybe. But again, the people who love it seem to also love Name of the Wind. I'm thinking maybe that is what it is. Number 12, this is where you get into those books where I enjoyed, but I would say it's nothing that I'm like anxious to go back to. John Dies at the End. This was an interesting take on a horror story. I love the humor. I think it's very hard to land humor in a horror book, I think, and make sure it stays scary. So there's a fine line there. I've always said there's a very fine line. You go left and it's horror, and you go right and it's comedy. And it's really hard to walk that blade and not fall off in one direction. I felt like there's a very good balance there. I think it was done really, really well. I enjoyed the adventure. Kind of wanted a little bit more about some of the other characters outside the main two, but I did enjoy it. I had a really good twist that I didn't see coming, and it was pretty good. But I had a good time with it. But it's nothing where I'm like, yeah, that's a new world I got to get into. This very much feels like a book that should stay as a standalone, and I enjoy it that way. And that's kind of why I'm going to just treat it as a standalone going forward. Number 11, I didn't realize until I was making this list that I didn't finish the series. That's kind of embarrassing. You know, sometimes you get your... This is why I make a schedule, guys, because these things can slip my mind. I can remember, all the words of the Humpty Dance, but I can't remember what I did yesterday. That's just kind of the way that things go. But Threadlight, number 11, Threadlight by Zach Argyle. I read books 1 and 2 and never read book 3. And it wasn't because I wasn't enjoying it or anything. It's just, I just kind of forgot about it. It just kind of fell off of my schedule. And that's a big mistake on my behalf. I was enjoying the story for the most part. I put it comfortably here about number 11 because I did, if I'm being critical, I did feel like it's stuff that other authors have done better a little bit. It is very much, it feels like a Brandon Sanderson fan fiction. That's kind of what it would feel like a little bit. And I think that was always the criticism going in, as people were like, it's just too much like Mistborn. I can see that. I feel like it does kind of stand on its own, but it does feel like a first draft of a Brandon Sanderson story. So I was enjoying the series, don't get me wrong, but it's not enough to get it into the top 10 of the new series I started here. And I'm embarrassed now when I'm realizing I didn't even finish it, and I wasn't because I didn't want to. Who does 2/3 of a trilogy and doesn't finish it? That's something I need to correct, I think. Number 10, Silo. Man, this one, I really enjoyed the TV show. And I tried reading Wool a couple years back, and it was just bad timing. I was reading too many other things. So I said I'd come back to it this year after I started watching the show. Really did enjoy it. And now I can confirm what my initial impressions were, is that the show is better. I think the show does it better. It does all the background characters better. It makes everything seem a little bit more balanced, whereas the book just hops around nonstop. It never picks a character really to focus on. It's like, can we just stay with one character for a chapter or two? It just hopped around so much. And it's like, once you figure out like the big mystery, I don't know if it really held my attention after that. And I feel like it's something the show is doing better. So I think going forward, it's just going to be like, I'm going to do the show only, but I like a lot of the ideas here. Now, it does feel like stuff that other series have done. Fallout's done it. And it's some things that I feel like you might be repeating some things that you've heard other places. And when you learn that this was really like a short story collection that was like collected into one narrative book, I understand that, because it does feel very broken in that regard. That's what kind of holds that back and is right there on that fringe of series. I don't know if I'm going to continue. I think I'll just keep watching the show, because I do enjoy it just a little more. Number 9, since it's only one book, I'm going to say The Last Legacy, James Logan. This was Silver Blood Promise, which I did like, didn't love. I said, I think I described it as it was a perfectly adequate first book in a new fantasy series. I really loved the duo of Flea and Lucan. I loved that collection right there. Those two together were awesome. Every time those two were together, the dialogue was terrific. Had a good time. I could see why it got some of the Scott Lynch comparisons in the writing style. I don't feel like if you go into that book expecting Eliza Lachlan Moore, you're going to be disappointed. But I could see why it was getting people to have that reaction, because of the dialogue between those two. Was very, very similar to what went down in Gentlemen Bastards. But with me, I enjoyed the start. It was one of those where, like, okay, you set up the quest, and then you lost track about halfway through and did a different quest than the main quest. Now, I understand this is book 1 of a trilogy, So we're going to get to those things. So hopefully going forward, we've got the character main cast kind of all introduced now, and we've got an actual goal in mind. And hopefully we do get more into that in book 2 here in 2025. But very good start to a series. Number 8, I'd have to go with the Border Trilogy. Now, this is Cormac McCarthy. I read all the Pretty Horses, and I did like it. I said very much, I think one of the highest compliments I could give is I said, imagine if Larry McMurtry had written a spinoff of Lonesome Dove and it had been about Newt. That's kind of what this story felt like. Like they were following one of those members from that band in Lonesome Dove in their own little adventure from Texas to Mexico. That's kind of what it made me feel like. It was a lot more of almost like a hopeless romantic kind of tale than I was expecting from Cormac McCarthy, because before this, I was 1-1. I was not crazy about Blood Meridian like everyone else, but I did love The Road. And this one, I think, fell more towards The Road for me. I like a lot, like all of his writing style aside, I do feel like he can spin a good story and he can keep you invested in a character or two. And he does that very much here with All the Pretty Horses. And it's just one of those that's like, will I continue with it? Maybe. It's not that I don't want to or anything like that. It's just I haven't yet. I think with me is I'm good for like 1 or 2 Western books a year. That's kind of been dominated by Larry McMurtry at this point. But I do think that Cormac McCarthy is doing a great job there. Now, these next few are ones that I've only done like 1 book of, but I feel like they were a good enough start that I could put them a little higher than some of these. I know that number 7 is going to be a lot higher in a year or two, because The Last Kingdom is a television series I love, and I'm pretty sure the books are going to be no different, because the book number 1, The Last Kingdom, was awesome. Bernard Cornwell definitely seems to be writing historical fiction in a way that I dig it. That's easy for me when it's Viking stuff, because I'm all about Viking action. But with this, you got one of the best characters ever created in Uhtred, son of Uhtred, and seeing his relationship with King Alfred be first developed. And I felt like this first book did something better than the show did. It gave me more of a coming-of-age story, because in the show, Uhtred's a kid for 10 minutes. In this, he's almost the whole book. I think the book ends, he's a 16 or 17 years old. So you get a little bit more of that. So it's a great start to a story I already know that I love. But getting it in kind of a slow burn, slow roll with this character, that's something I could not ask for more. It feels almost like I'm reading the director's cut of the show, and that's awesome. So sometimes it works out. I always say, I like to read it first. That way I can watch the adaptation and see why they made some of the decisions they did. With this, I can look back, and they kind of do it in the opposite direction and say, okay, yeah, they probably wouldn't have been able to do that on TV. I understand why they did it this way. But again, you have faces with all the names, and that does help a lot, because some of those Viking names, they're out there a little bit, and it's hard to keep some of them separate sometimes, especially all the Aethel names. But a great, great start to the Saxon Tales and Uhtred's journey here. It's a Saxon Stories. I always want to call it Saxon Tales. I don't know. I think they just call it the Last Kingdom series now, and that makes a lot of sense. Number 6, again, it's just a book 1, but I got to say The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, because this was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome. I had a really, really good time in this new world by Joe that was not in the world of the First Law. You got that high measuring stick when it comes to First Law. But for me, same kind of attitude in his writing style, same kind of persona from his characters. It doesn't feel like it could take place in the world of the First Law, but like the dialogue similar to the First Law. And I think Joe's dialogue is something that just makes his characters just pop off the page, and that's no different here. It would be higher, like I said, but it's just book 1, so I don't want to really put it that high, but it is a series that doesn't come out starting for everybody until next year, but it's one of those I would definitely count on this, because it's excellent, and I was very, very satisfied with what we got here. And I'm looking forward to continuing in 2026, I guess, is when book number 2 comes out. But it's a great start, and I'm pretty sure that we know at this point that Joe knows where he's going with the story, and I'm sure it's going to be very, very well plotted out, and I can't wait to see where he goes with it after how this first book does conclude. Number 5, this is maybe the best book that I read this year, but again, it's book number 1. But the fact that it could be number 5 just tells you how awesome Shogun was by James Clavell. Shogun was amazing. This is part of the Asian saga, obviously. I have no current plans to keep going as of this moment. I mean, I will. I'm just saying I don't have anything on the schedule, for Taipan or Gaijin or any of that stuff. I will continue with it. I bought the whole series. I've got the whole set. And if it's anything even close to what Shogun was, then of course I'm going to keep reading the Asian saga. But yeah, again, just for book number 1, Shogun, amazing, amazing ride. And that book is long enough that it feels like a series for some people, but it's absolutely worth the investment, worth the journey. And you'll feel like you're right there with Blackthorn doing Stranger in Strangeland in the best way that I have ever seen it written. One of the best books ever. and obviously one of the best book ones, I think. But anxious to see how it goes forward, because I believe it is very much an anthology series. You know, it isn't very much sequels. But seeing how he formats his stories now, I'm pretty sure I'm going to like some more within the Asian saga. Number 4, this is one I put off for a while, and that was reading Larry Correia. But Saga of the Forgotten Warrior, I am very glad that I started here, because this is just awesome. He has done the impossible, and he has made a fantasy series almost feel like a thriller. Now, the guy, he's a great action writer. Obviously, the Monster Hunter International series is massive, and he's been doing that for a while. And everyone says those books are just like a thrill ride. And I did not think that was possible with fantasy, to make it feel this fast-paced, this breakneck, but not sacrifice any world building, any character development, and just give you a bunch of sword fights and get to the punching and all that. He has those things, and they're awesome when they happen. And he writes sword fights, like Ashok's taking on like 12 people at once. He writes it really, really good, and just you understand exactly what's going on. You can see it in your mind's eye. He's that good of a writer, but man, he's built this world up pretty good. I read 3 books in the series, and I'll be concluding it probably in 2025, because that's when the series finale does come out. But I'm really loving what I saw here at the beginning of that series, and it's one that's, if you're into fantasy at all, I think you're gonna like the series. It's really damn good. It's seriously underrated. I don't know why people don't talk about the series more within the fantasy community. I know Larry can be kind of abrasive, but there's lots of authors out there that can be abrasive. If you're just looking for good fantasy storytelling, Saga of the Forgotten Warrior is it. I think you will enjoy it quite a bit. Number 3. Now, this is where you get close. These were all very, very close. And I think maybe if I had finished book 3 before I record this video, it might have been higher. But I got to go with Prince of Nothing by R. Scott Baker. This one was very unexpected. I did not expect to start it this year. It was earmarked for 2025 for me, but I just got bullied so long by Jordan over at iWizard, by Joanna, by Philip. It's bullied with positivity about how great this series was and how much I was going to love it. So I finally said, screw it. I'm going to go ahead and pick up The Darkness Comes Before. One of the best books I read all year was The Darkness That Comes Before. And I read book 2. Didn't like it as much as book 1, but I liked it a lot. I like where it's going. It did feel like a setup book for what the haps are in book 3, which I probably won't be getting to until January, because the new Brandon Sanderson book's just, it's ridiculous. But I love everything that I've found in Prince of Nothing. It's definitely not a series that's going to be for everybody. If you're looking for really, really grimdark stuff, you know, like I said, a good marriage of Frank Herbert's Dune and Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, but much more grim, much more brutal, kind of a backdrop of real-world history of like the Crusades. I think this would be exactly what you're looking for. His world building is amazing, and I just want to know more and more about what came before, and that's what makes this series really, really intriguing. What's going on in the present is great, but what went on in the past has me being like, I want to know more. I definitely want to click that. Starship Troopers, would you like to know more? Yes, that's kind of where I am with this. I definitely want to know more about this world, and I can't wait to see what does happen. Number 2, I'm guessing you guys can probably figure out the final 2 if you've been watching all year. Number 2, I have to go with War for the Rose Throne by Peter Macklin. Now, Patrick had been telling me for years I was going to love this series when I got to it. And it just one of those things I kept putting off. And I was like, you know what, these books are really short. Why don't I just go ahead and pick up the first one? I just flew through it, loved it. Priest of Bones was just awesome. And it just kept going. Priest of Lies was great. Priest of Crowns, Priest of Gallows. This is an incredible series. I had never seen kind of this fantasy series. It kind of was like on the ground level, like the street level. There's not, you know, there's magic in there, but it's very lowbrow. It's very much almost feels like a gangster story. Almost feels like a kind of like a fancy version of like The Godfather, kind of like Greenbone did. But this, it's just a little less magic. There is magic. It's just, it isn't really explained to you, and I like that. I don't need the magic explained to me, but you're very, very intrigued by it. But just this kind of this turf war, and then going through the political machinations of this kingdom, it's kind of fallen apart a little bit. And Thomas Piety is just an incredible character, and being in his head, it's a character that's not going to leave my head for a while, because he was just excellent. I felt like this series, the only problem I had with it, could have gone one more book. It could have, because it felt like book 4 did feel like it was kind of cramming 2 books together. I wish we'd gotten a book 4 and 5, but it's still just awesome. I have no real criticisms outside of that for the series. Excellent if you're into that kind of stuff. It does PTSD like I've never seen before, but it's grim, but it's never one that's going to make you just feel like, oh God, these people are just awful. They do have redeeming qualities, so they're not quite as cruel as something as, say, The First Law, but they are pretty grim, and they are looking out for number 1. There is a line for some people, especially Thomas, and you don't want to cross that line, because you'll find yourself dearly departed. And that's just an awesome, awesome series. And I think you will fall in love with the Pious Men and you'll want to join that gang. Number one, guys, some people won't consider this a series. I do, since it was released in 6 parts and I read the collection as a whole. This is Blackwater by Michael McDowell, a series I did not expect to love as much as I did. It's just one of those where I can look at it and people will say, but not a lot's happening. And I'm like, that's okay with me. I just want to spend time with this family. What's going on? So you have these undertones. There's this big horror monster infiltrating this family, but you almost kind of forget about it as you're just going through the generations of watching this family. And the way he's able to write these next generation of kids and watching them grow up, and then they have kids and watch them grow up. The story goes 50 years, and you feel attached to all 3 to 4 generations of this family that you see through the course of the pages. It's just an incredible journey. And Michael McDowell writes slice of life, and he writes Southern Gothic in a way I've never seen before. It's just incredible. And I can look at this and be like, so this is the guy who wrote Beetlejuice. Okay. Now, that doesn't feel like Beetlejuice, but I can understand his writing chops actually earning him a screenplay like that. This is just an incredible ride, and I love the Kasky family so much, and I could not get enough. They could have went 3 or 4 more generations with that family, and I'd have been all in. And I'm for sure going to read more Michael McDowell. I think Elementals is the next one I have up. This is an author I was not really on my radar. I got to give credit to someone on my Discord, Baba. He recommended this to me. Said, as a Stephen King fan, as Robert McCammon fan, I think you're really going to dig this, and you'd like some good slice of life and these family relationships. You're not going to find a better match. And he was right. Absolute home run of everything that I love in a story. He does it all because you've got several coming-of-age stories. You've got this huge family drama. You got this great underlying mystery and this big greasy monster in the background that you're just waiting for things to explode. And it does so damn well. So that is the new series I started in 2024 and how I would rank my experience with each. Obviously, I don't have any regrets. I'm glad that I tried all these, and I'm anxious for all these new ones that I'm going to try in 2025. So as for these, I guess a lot of these, I just got to say, I got to finish them now. Like, I can't believe I didn't even realize until I made this list I hadn't finished Threadlight. So sometimes, guys, that's why it's good to make yourself a schedule and stick to it, because you make mistakes like that. But hey, what are some of the new series that you started this year? I'd love to know what some of your favorites were. Did you read any of these? Where would you put it? Am I a complete idiot because I read The Color of Magic first? Yes, I know the Turtles will say that I am. But hey, these things are all welcome. Drop in the comments, guys. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you there.